usually 4 practices that way, and then we've had 2 practices more kind of game week related, preparing for TCU, trying to put the guys in the right spots and get the healthy guys out there so we can prepare for this game. Obviously, when we get to the bowl, we'll have, I think, 3 practices to prepare there, and we've got 2 remaining here today and tomorrow before the kids get a little break. But we basically approached it like we're preparing for the game this week from a game planning standpoint, and then we'll repeat some of these practices when we get to the site over in Memphis. But the kids have really been excited. They've worked hard. We've worked really hard in the kicking game. We've done some extra work in the red area. Obviously, kind of a very different offense for us to play against in that they have 5 wide receivers on the field a lot of the game, sometimes 4 wide receivers. So it puts you in pass rush mode. They have a very, very good back. They've got a very athletic defense who they can all run. They got some speed on defense. So that's going to create some challenges for us, but we're excited for the opportunity. You know, their quarterback I've seen before, and I know him. He's a really good player. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
How has the team's morale been boosted since the announcement of the 4 guys coming back?
Yeah, I think they were really excited. I thought that energized, especially the next practice from that standpoint. And each one of those guys is really practicing hard. They're committed to the future here. They're also wanting to send the seniors out the right way. And they each spoke to that when they talked to the team. So it's been a good bonus, good emotional bonus.
Getting back to Hill, is there anybody or I guess any quarterbacks that you guys have faced that you feel like are applicable to what you're going to see with him?
Well, we probably played some guys like him, but they weren't in the same kind of offense. You know, this is a drop back offense. It's not really a quarterback run offense. He can run, but they don't design a lot of quarterback runs for him. So a lot of the running quarterbacks we faced were designed quarterback runs. So I wouldn't say that anybody's. The difference is the scheme. The difference is the number of wide receivers on the field and the spread sets and the empty sets, which is kind of different for us because nobody in our league really plays that style anymore. I mean, the closest team to how they play is probably A&M, you know, who we don't play.
Kirby, following up the 4 players that are coming back, there's 2 high-profile running backs who decided not to play in bowl games. You've probably heard the stories.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinion on the topic, and would you anticipate this might become more commonplace in the future?
You know, I just read about it, Jeff. I just saw it, I guess yesterday. Was it yesterday the McCaffrey deal came
Right.
out? And you know, we've been so busy with practice, I haven't thought much about it. Obviously, it's a concern in college football if that starts to happen. I certainly think that, you know, kids look at where am I predicted, what is the financial value, and also how important is this game, and that all goes back to your tie to your university. You know, how important is it to your teammates? How important is it to the development of your team? You know, some coaches would argue, does it matter that much? Because I'm trying to develop my team for the future, and that guy's not going to be there anyway. But it goes back to what you're playing for. What's your purpose? Why are you playing? If you're playing for the love of the game and help your team win, then you certainly should play in that game. If not, then maybe it's otherwise. And I know Leonard's a little different because his is an injury, so it has a lot to do with the injury.
Can you understand how a couple of kids might sort of think that way, that it's a
Well,
symbol
I mean, I think
of
it's each kid's individual responsibility to make that decision that only they can make. You know, I think that's up to them. I certainly think from a perspective of your teammates that they feel like that game's important enough to play in. But it is nowadays you have to be look at it from a selfish perspective for the kid, because they've got to look at it and make a decision of this is about me, but this is also about the team and how it affects the team. And I think as long as they handle it the right way, have discussions with the team and consult with them, then they do what they do. Certainly think that could be a thing of the future where people bring it up. You know, what is the meaning of these games? I've told these kids about our game. Most important of this game, you remember the outcome. You know, you remember the outcome of the game. That's what I remember about the 4 bowl games, 3 bowl games I played in, was the outcome. Wasn't where I went, where we went, what we did at night, what were the parties like, what was the practice like. All they cared about was who won the game. So that's the feature presentation for our kids in this one.
You talked about being careful not to take on the role as a recruiter when the guys were coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, could you see yourself, I mean, is that a situation where, you know, you as a coach, you know, you've got a guy that may be thinking about doing something like that, bypassing a bowl? Would you kind of consider being the recruiter then? I mean, are you trying to talk to those guys?
Well, I still think that's their decision. That's their choice. I certainly think it doesn't show a great reflection to their team, to those team players and those guys. But that's their choice, just like the choice to come out would be, or to stay would be. So ultimately, they've got to be able to live with that decision and focus on it. You've also got to consider how the NFL looks at that too, because they have games every week, you know, and they're going to look at it and say, okay, how does the NFL perceive this to be?
Kirby, we spoke to the four juniors that decided to come back last week. Have you had similar conversations with Tom Sanders, Aaron Davis, or any others that are looking at maybe moving on after the season?
Yeah, we've talked to those guys, and I think that each one of them come to the conclusion, come to the decision when it comes time. I think those four other guys just felt really comfortable with their decision, and they felt really good about it and were ready to come forward. Doesn't mean those other guys aren't, just means they weren't ready to come out and do that. And I've had conversations with them since those four, so it's kind of a ever-evolving process.
Kirby, I know you're limited in what you can say about recruiting, but obviously there's stuff out there about Tennille Carter. I wanted to give you a chance to respond to pulling of the offer apparently, and that what the brother said about you not calling personally to tell him about it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not allowed to talk about that situation at all. But I will say that my philosophy, our philosophy has always been, we're not going to drop kids in recruiting, okay? We may defer enrollment. We may say you can enroll at a later date, but we're not going to drop kids in recruiting, okay? That's not, but again, I can't comment on this situation. I can only comment on philosophically how we feel and how conversations happen. But I can't comment on his specific situation.
When you say defer enrollment, you talking about gray shirting?
No, I'm talking about defer enrollment from mid-year to February signing, coming in the summer. Or if you're coming in the summer, deferring to gray shirt. Gray shirt would be the later. The first would be January, or when I say January, I mean signing